Peace. This is the Open Mindedness video series, episode 7. It's been a few days or a week or so before I've released another video. I do want to do this on a daily basis, so I apologize about the delay. But today I want to hit on a topic that might rub people the wrong way, but it does need to be talked about and really analyzed and researched. Because it's time that truth is uncompromised. It's time that we just speak the truth, regardless of how people feel about it, regardless of whether feelings get hurt. The time for diplomacy and politically correctness is all over. So what I want to talk about today is, as a believer in Islam and a follower of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, what led me that way when prior to that, growing up, I was raised in a Christian household and came up in the church and spent a lot of time in ministry when I was younger. So I want to bring up some historical facts that led to my transition, and I want to bring up my personal experience as well, to shed light on the reality of everything. So let's get straight into it. Well, first of all, to do a basic research of history will make you feel uncomfortable about being, quote unquote, a Christian. Now, the term Christian, let's not make any mistake about it. The term Christian is really a good term. It's a righteous name. The word Christian means to be crystallized into oneness with God. So when we're just talking about the term and the definition or the meaning of the word, I have no complaints at all, because to be crystallized into oneness with God is what a Muslim is all about. That's why a Muslim can comfortably say that we are Christian as well as Muslim, because the terms go hand in hand. But when we're talking about the historical reality of Christianity and where did we get this religion, there is historical research that proves and bears witness that prior to coming to these shores as slaves, we were not Christians in the majority of the population that came over here. The majority of us, based off of historical research and fact, were indeed Muslims, and we were taken through a process to break down the mindset of Islam prior to becoming slaves, because you cannot make a Muslim a slave. It's impossible. We would rather prefer death over being enslaved, especially in the type of enslavement that we suffered here in North America and throughout the Caribbean and etc. So what they first had to do was, when they brought us over here to these shores, they put us through a process called seasoning. And that process called seasoning was a 64-year period, a 64-year hidden period that the history books still don't talk about, but thankfully we can research it and find that this is a reality. But it took 64 years for them to break us away from our language, break us away from the reality of our God, break us away from the terms that we use for God, break us away from our cultural practices, and break us away from that mindset of a Muslim, which is, I fear no God but Allah, and no man or nothing besides Allah can make me bow down. I would prefer death over submitting to some other inferior power. So because we had that mindset, enslavement could not have taken place unless they put us through this very brutal abuse, this brutal psychological warfare that took a total of 64 years to get a generation of people to come forward that were submissive and docile. Now, the docile ones they sent up to North America, which is sadly most of our ancestors, and the ones that stayed firm and was rebellious and liked to fight and rebel against the system, those were the ones that were sent down to the Caribbean. So in the Caribbean, you see a different breed, such as Haiti. You mess with the Haitians and you look at the Haitians and how they rolled out, they didn't submit. They beat the brakes off of Napoleon, which is one of the greatest emperors, or not emperor, but one of the greatest generals of the Caucasians. But they whooped his backside pretty bad, and they're the first independent nation out of this Western Hemisphere. So that's definitely a reality. But so the question remains, where did we get Christianity? How did we get here? Another reality is the Bible. You know, for a long time during our slave enslavement, we were forbidden to read. So if we were forbidden to read, how do we get acquainted with the Bible? And the reality is that the slave master would pick certain ones from among us that they felt that they could control, and they would actually bring them into their private council and teach them the parts of the Bible that they wanted to regurgitate to the slaves. So when we would have our services, you would have the preacher highlighting "Turn the Other Cheek." You would have the black preacher, after being taught by the slave master again, highlighting all of the verses in the New Testament that talks about being a good slave and being obedient to your master. Those are the parts of the scriptures that they wanted to highlight and bring forward so that we wouldn't have that mentality or that spirit to rebel and buck the system. It was those among us who rose through the ashes over time, such as Nat Turner, that used the prophecies of the Bible and the scripture to bring about a revolution. But for the most part, just like it is today, most of our black men or black women who go to seminary school, they come out with this docile, weak, passive type of religion that has no bearings and doesn't have any fortitude to fight for freedom, justice, and equality, or for the liberation of our people. So the question is, if we were separated and segregated because they didn't allow us to have church with them, they didn't allow us to live amongst them, they didn't allow the majority of us to be in the house with them, so they had a separatist and segregationist mentality. But then they give you a Bible and they give you a religion that promises that now all of a sudden, if we believe in this, we can go to heaven with them and coexist in a heaven with them. But while we were on earth, we had to be segregated and separated. Come on now. At some point, something should begin to click and say that, hey, this does not make sense. There's something wrong with this picture. Because while we're face to face in flesh, you don't want nothing to do with me. My people can't be by your people. My people can't eat with your people. My people can't go to a restaurant or go to toilet or go to water fountain with your people. But you want to sell me on this religion and this belief system that says, if I believe in this, once I die, I'll be blessed to have all these riches and golds and pearly gates and streets of gold and all this other crap. And now in that state or that condition, we can live with you. So something's definitely backwards about this entire reality. And there's something that we must understand. And there's a reality and a truth that we must become acquainted with to figure out what really was our practice and our religion. Some people make the mistake in saying that Islam started with Prophet Muhammad, who was the messenger of ultimately the entire world, but specifically the Arabic people. And if that was the case, if you go into the history, you'll see that at a certain point, Prophet Muhammad was walking past an Ethiopian slave. And the Ethiopian slave called on the one God, Allah, and Prophet Muhammad stopped. And he said, wait, how do you know about this God, Allah? So after speaking with the black Ethiopian slave, he actually began to talk about the religion that he was acquainted with, which was Islam, and the belief or the monotheism of the belief in one God and a God being supreme over all other beings. And once he heard that, Prophet Muhammad, according to history, began to take the man unto his own wing and purchase his freedom and free him as being a slave. Because he said any man who calls on the name of Allah can never be a slave. So Prophet Muhammad in his actual history came across a black man. Notice the history. A black man who already knew about the reality of God and Allah that the Arabs were learning about. He already knew about it. So the question is, evidently prior to Prophet Muhammad receiving the revelation, Islam was already in existence. Then we go on to the next point. The Holy Quran is a book that was revealed to Prophet Muhammad over a 23-year period. And this book is said to be revealed to him through the prophet Jibril, which in English we say Gabriel, the angel Gabriel, right? But in one of Prophet Muhammad's hadiths, he talks about how there was a man who entered a cave one day with him and his companions. And this man asked him many questions. and tested Prophet Muhammad, and Prophet Muhammad answered the questions. And as the man got up to walk away, he told his companions, he said, "Do you all know who that man is?" And the companion said, "No, we don't." And then he said, "That is the angel Jibril, or the angel Gabriel." Now, what they also included in this hadith was that this man, physical man, who came up asking these questions was actually an African, a black man from the continent of Africa. So evidently, wherever this man Gabriel or Jibril came from, the reality and the knowledge of Allah in Islam was already in existence. See, in Africa, we didn't have to differentiate between Islam and make it like a branched off, boxed off religion, because Islam is really a way of life, and the Holy Quran bears witness. It says that Islam was given to us as a religion. Not that it is a religion, but it was given to us as a religion because we had been hit in the head and lost the knowledge of ourselves and who we were. So because we lost that knowledge, it had to be given to us in a set, systematic way so that we can accept it and begin to practice it again and begin to turn back into our original selves. But in reality, prior to our enslavement, it was an actual way of life. So as Muslims, we have dietary laws. We have an entire program that affects every aspect of how we live our lives, which is why we say it is a way of life, not just a religion. A religion is just a set of principles, a set of religious beliefs. But a way of life means that every aspect throughout my day has some bearings on my belief system in the one God, the supreme being, Allah. So we have to really tackle this reality about where do we get Christianity from? Where do we get the Bible from? Who is this King James that we read his version and we're just so into, getting his understanding on things? Was he worthy of making a version? Was he worthy of translating the scriptures? Was he worthy of putting together a team of scholars? Who was these team of scholars? Were they worthy of being the representatives of the Bible? There's so many things that we have to tackle, because you can't tell me that you're going to treat me wrong, but you're going to teach me correctly. You're going to treat me like crap, but then you're going to teach me properly. There's something wrong with that picture. Someone who wants to treat you properly is more likely to teach you properly. But you can't tell me that you're treating me properly, but you're teaching me properly, but you're treating me like crap. You're beating me, you're abusing me, you're raping me, you're molesting me. But then when it comes to spiritual matters, let me teach you the correct truth. Please, give me a break. So long story short, I'm going to do several follow-up videos with this one topic until we gain a good understanding of what was our natural religion. What was our natural way of life? How did we live prior to being taught the ways of Christianity? Because there's something wrong if you say that the same God that you serve is the same God of the Ku Klux Klan, because they say that they believe in God. And they have the famous picture with the robes on and the cross burning on fire, and then behind there's a banner that says Jesus saves. The first ship that brought the slaves over here in the year 1555 was the ship Jesus. They called it Jesus von Lubeck. And that's the ship that brought the first slaves over, which means that we had an understanding of spiritual matters, and we respected the prophet Jesus or the prophet Isa, or whatever you want to have it, whatever dialect you want to call his name in. But because we respected him, they used his name as a trick to deceive us, to go along with a plan that was not in our best interest. And this has been the same hustle that the enemy has used over the span of pretty much 6,000 years, but the recent time span of the last 500 years. So we need to tackle this. I hope that begins to prick your conscience, and that these talks are starting to affect your mind and get you to thinking about certain things. And I encourage you all to go research. This is 2014. There's so much information on the internet. Just use your discernment and use your research skills to compare and juxtapose, so that you come up with a truth that really is overwhelmingly published now. For us to still be claiming on to this religion and claiming on to the God of our enemies is really, at this point, embarrassing. It's actually sad. So I encourage you all to do the research. Go on Google, go to your library, talk, be open-minded. That's what these video series is about. Go out and venture out and find out what it is that we believe. Find out what it is that other religions believe. Start to juxtapose, because you cannot think you have the truth